What's up, everybody? Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Clint Davis, your host. Thanks so much for being with us. We gather together today to read from the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 4 is where we are. We left off in verse 14 yesterday, so we pick it up in verse 15 today. The subheading in my Bible says, "The work resumes on building the wall." When our enemies, Nehemiah says, heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction, and half held spears, bows, and shields, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah, who were building the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me, and I said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, "The work is great and widely spread, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. In the place where you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us." So we labored at the work, and half of them held spears from the break of dawn until the stars came out. I also said to the people at that time, "Let every man and his servant pass with the night within Jerusalem, and that they may be a guard for us by night and my labor by day." So neither I nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us took off our clothes. Each kept his weapon at his right hand. Now, I said at the end of the last podcast that Nehemiah and his fellow Judeans took turns guarding the wall and building the wall. So some people would guard it one day, and they would work along while guarding the wall, and others would then be there doing the labor, and then they would reverse. And so back and forth, they took turns, some guarding, some watching off in the distance, and some working. This was a constant experience for them and a constant method for them to complete the building of the wall. I think sometimes in our modern world, the building of the wall and the danger that these people faced is greatly misunderstood and understated. And the reason for that is that we live in a relatively safe environment. I'm recording this from America, and in 2025 in a small town. Our town has about 5,500 people in it. Our county has 32,000 people in it, and it's a relatively safe place. Now, if you look at crime statistics, people say, "Oh, your county's dangerous or your city's dangerous," because per capita we might have some major crimes. But for the most part, we're very safe people. We don't have to lock all our doors. We don't have to put walls up around our houses. We don't have people threatening from the outside to come into our city and destroy it physically by war and by attack and by advance. And so we live in a very safe environment. We can travel, right? We have access to travel the entire world over. We can go from here to Dubai. We can go to Pakistan. We can go to Africa. We can go to different parts of the world, and we can get there easily, and we can be safe in doing it. We live in a relatively safe world. Now, there are parts of our world that aren't safe, maybe in parts of the third world, but for the most part, those of us who are listening to this podcast live in a very safe world and a very safe environment. That is not the world that Nehemiah lived in with his fellow Jews. They lived in a world where they had to build a wall in order to protect their homes, in order to protect their city, in order to protect their valuables, in order to protect their temple. There are multiple illustrations, even in the stories of Ezra and Nehemiah, of people coming in and taking off with the vessels of the temple. Read the books of Kings and Chronicles, and you'll see it consistently. People come in and take off parts of the vessels in the temple. They take off the royal treasury, etc. It is armies that are invading. They will conquer, and then they will take the spoil for themselves, and they'll divide it among themselves. To the victor goes the spoils. And so a wall around the city is essential. And everybody there knew that. In particular, they recognized that in this particular case, as they're concluding the building of the second half of the wall, that Sanballat and Tobiah had aroused the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites to come against them. Right? Nobody wanted them to build the wall. Nobody wanted a strong Jerusalem in that part of the world. And so they didn't want the reestablishment of the worship of God. They didn't want a strong people. They didn't want a well-oiled society, a well-ordered society in Jerusalem. They didn't want Jerusalem to rise to power again. And so they are seeking to destroy any kind of work that is done in order to secure Jerusalem. The most important thing to do is secure your own borders. If you're living in those days, it's still important to secure your own borders, to know who you have in the country and who you don't have in the country, who you're allowing in and who you're not, because not everybody wants to seek your good. There are people who want to seek your harm, and certainly the Jews understood that there were many people who wanted to seek their harm. And so they were insistent on building this wall, but what they did in building this wall was they divided themselves up and developed a plan that would enable them to see the attackers coming, blow the trumpet, everybody rally, go to battle. They had their weapons on them all the time. They were always vigilant and ready and prepared in case the battle comes to them. They were ready, they were vigilant, they were prepared to go to battle and to stand firm and to persevere in their work and to stand firm for the protection of their families and their homes and for the protection of one another. This is a wonderful story of how the people of God came together to defend themselves against the threats of the world, and they also took time to rebuild a wall to secure Jerusalem, secure the place of God on this earth. Now, we don't think about Jerusalem in the same sense today. As Christians, we believe, I'm a covenant theologian, which means I believe the Christian church is the modern-day Israel. That is the continuation of the covenant. It's the modern-day Israel. And so we, like they had the sign of circumcision, we have the sign of baptism. We apply it to our children just as they did because it's a continuation of the covenant promise of God. In the modern era, we are the new Jerusalem. We are Zion. God dwells with his people through the ministry of his Spirit in the hearts and minds of his people. We are the temple of the Lord. And so we believe that as Reformed theologians, covenantal theologians, and biblical students. And so as a result of that, we recognize that the contemporary application of this is not so much that we wall off Jerusalem per se, it's that we wall off the church, not in that we don't want to go out and engage with the world around us, but we want to protect the house of God. We want to protect the people of God. We want to protect the dwelling of God and ensure that those who are dwelling within the midst of his people are those who are committed to him. And so that's why we have membership vows. That's why we have church discipline, etc., because we want to make sure that we are the people of God, living in righteousness to the glory of God and protecting one another so as to bring glory to his name, just as the people in Jerusalem did. And as a result of that, we must be on guard. We must always be on guard because the enemy is always there, ready to attack, and we must be ready to rally, to support one another, to encourage one another, and to build one another up, and to be there for one another as we do the work God has called us to do as his church, his dwelling place on earth. You guys take care. God bless you. I'll catch you next time.